I mean, how ironic is it that the thing that got us into this world is the most taboo subject that you can address? That baffles me to no end. We never talk about sex, even amongst our friends. When's the last time you asked your friend, hey, how's your sex life? People almost never talk about it unless there's a problem. And therefore, there's tons of problems.
The amazing thing about the mushrooms is that they speak. They talk to you. They will answer questions, carry on conversations. Psilocybin just pulls up a chair on the porch and puts its feet up.
All right, hello there, my sexy psycho nuts. Here we are. This is the chapter I have personally been waiting for quite a while, and it's the the subject why I feel it's really important for me to separate out myself from other projects. This is a topic that can get controversial. It is a topic that is taboo, and it is one of the most important conversations, I believe, that we can have as human beings. But before we get there, let me just say, I'm so happy that you're here with me today. Honest to God, I've been doing a lot of reflection here lately, and it is really humbling, and it is really empowering that so many of you, not huge numbers obviously, but enough that it really helps me understand that I am bringing value to the world in the conversations that I'm having and the thoughts that I share in the work that I do. And hopefully my work inspires you to be more of yourself as well. That's really what it's all about. So if you would like to further support my work on this podcast and Connor's work, who works so hard to help me bring this show to you, then please visit the Patreon that is going to be posted in the comments, or in the show notes rather. Throw in $5 a month. It's like not hardly anything, but if 100 of y'all did that and we had $500 a month, it would do wonders for this show. It's not about paying me. It's about improving the quality of this show, which one of the first things for that is to get Connor paid something, you all. He's working really hard to help bring this for you. So anyway, that is the only kind of house cleaning that I want to bring up. You can find that link again in the comments. And I look forward to your support monetarily. Your energetic, attentive support it's like there's nothing more important than that. There's nothing more valuable than your attention. So for this episode, I'm going to put my attention and bring your attention to the subject of sex. That's right. It's not only my favorite topic to talk about, it's my favorite thing to do. I'm going to be quite honest with you here in this monologue about this subject and how I relate to it, because it's super important. So now you might be thinking, oh great, Eric is about to dump his sex life on us, and that's just not the case. What I want to be authentic and real about is more so the mistakes that I've made in my sexuality. Most, if not all of those mistakes were founded in the seeming inability to talk about the subject. Whenever we don't talk about something, whenever we suppress, whenever we repress, it's just gonna come out sideways. And I can fully acknowledge that this is what I experienced in my life. I grew up Catholic, as many of you all know. You may not be aware to the extent of how conservative that can get. Like, you got your Catholics that are, just go to church on Easter, and then you got your Catholics that are constantly shoving guilt and shame down your throat to prevent you from going to hell. I mean, they really think that they're doing you a favor, but it's not, especially in terms of suppressing really important conversations around things like sexuality. Again, one of, I believe, the most, if not the most important conversations that we can have. Now, why am I doing this? It's not to get anything off my chest. I feel free and clear of past mistakes. I have directly addressed the individuals where I've made mistakes, and I have directly addressed not the behavior, but the psychology, the mentality behind the behavior. And that's really what I want to try to bring into focus, and what I feel like for men in particular is really important to become more aware of, that we are constantly indoctrinated with objectification of women, that we are supposed to seduce and convince and just wear a woman down until she gives it up. There are so many ingrained behaviors and ways of thinking, particularly in, I believe, male sexuality, but female sexuality as well. But I can only speak for straight men because that's what I am. And I have explored that. I have tried to come to some kind of understanding. Am I suppressing my sexuality? Am I perhaps, bisexual, as we talk about sexuality being this spectrum? And I don't know, maybe it'll happen one day, but there is yet to be a man that I would be interested in, diddling his dingles. So I don't know. It's just where I'm at, folks. So please don't hold that against me. I don't hold your sexuality against you whatsoever. I want you to do whatever you want to do. I want you to have all of your desires fulfilled as long as they are consensual. So anyway, I've alluded to in the past the fact that my sexuality, particularly my proclivity for polyamory, has been the subject of some distress in my life, honestly. And some of that has been because of my struggle in coming to terms with that part of myself. And some of it, a lot of it, has been because of unhealthy projections from other people towards me who are triggered by my sexuality. And that's the other reason I want to speak to my experience really directly here in this introductory episode, is because there are a lot of people, I suspect the vast majority of people out there, who really deeply want to be with multiple partners. And I think that is not only normal, but I think it can be incredibly healthy. It can be ethical. It can be kind. It can be inclusive. It can be empowering. And I know that because I've seen that happen in my relationship over the last 11 years. Can it be challenging? Can it cause jealousy? And can it cause stress? And absolutely. I've seen that and experienced it too. But you know what? I experienced it more so in my monogamous relationships. And the key difference is that I have a partner who I can now have real conscientious conversations with, who will listen to what I'm sharing, not assume that it is against her, and then provide feedback, ongoing reflection on how we can manage our desires without intruding on the sovereignty of our partner. So all that's just to say that you may not like or agree with everything that I say or the guests in the following episodes say, and that's okay. That's really important, that we learn how to disagree respectfully. It doesn't mean I'm a bad person. It doesn't mean you're a better person, or I'm a better person, or you're done. None of that. We're all just working through this thing together. So, when I was a kid, my most important relationship was with what I understood to be God. Again, Catholic aside, I was so devoted to this idea of my Creator. And I still am, but it's found different ways of expressing. Much of that has been through experiencing myself as my creator. Not that I am God Almighty by any means, for heaven's sake, let's not think that. I do ascribe to the belief that there is a collective intelligence, there is an all that is kind of running the show, but that I am co-creating in partnership with that. And as this kind of experience of God has evolved, one of the most powerful ways that I've found to express that devotion to my Creator is in my devotion to the feminine. And that does absolutely include my devotion to sexual pleasure of the feminine. So I've always, since I can remember, I've said this so many times, like fourth grade is when I first remember feeling this deep relief, this deep satisfaction in spending time with two women, two girls as it would be then. And it just created this sense of balance in me that was so powerful. And it was about them. That's the key, is that it was about watching them enjoy each other's company and me facilitate that, sprinkle in some jokes, bring on some laughter, find ways that I can like fulfill their little needs and wants, like bring them a drink or, how can I help you right now? And coming off of a weekend spent with my wife and our lover, I feel even more how godly, how wholesome that desire has been. It has been projected on me over the years that I think I'm some kind of a sex mushroom guru. I've had business partners tell me that, I could never talk about my sexuality publicly or even in situations where I was working with psilocybin clients, I guess at that time it would have been, because people would assume that I, am just trying to have sex with anyone and everyone. I've had the same people tell me, that if I want to have these fantasies fulfilled, I should just run off and go get prostitutes with my wife. Like, that's what it's about. And I feel like it's really important to communicate that it's not. Just at our last circle with, the church that I work with, we had a men's circle, and I brought up my just insatiable sex drive. Just since I was a kid, I've just always had so much sex energy. I would just masturbate profusely. My parents would never talk with me about it. My mom once threw a book in at me that was like an illustrated sex book and then ran out the door. My dad never one time talked with me about sex, not one single time. And so I just crusted up my sheets and had a bunch of nasty socks under my bed, and felt really ashamed and guilty all the time. And so at this circle, when I brought up this kind of frustration that I experience sometimes with just being such a big part of my life experience, it was really comforting to hear other men reflect back similar experience, and for a lot of those men to feel like they could also speak to their experience around this subject. So if you feel this, please put something in the comments on YouTube. Hit me up on social media. I love hearing what you all have to say. This is so much more of a conversation than just me talking to you, but it takes your engagement. So please feel free to do that. So anyway, outside of psychedelics, well, I shouldn't say it like that. What I should say is that I have thought over the years, if I could only have one, psychedelics or sex, which one would it be? And it's a pretty easy answer for me that it would be sex, because especially as I've found with practices as of late, you can absolutely achieve some incredible altered states through sexuality. And it is such an opportunity to just worship the goddess, to just explore that expression of creation, the feminine and the softness and the curves and the sounds and it is the most profound connection that I have ever found to my creator. So it is very much a spiritual experience, and that of course opens up more opportunities for people to talk garbage about sex guruism and all that kind of stuff, because undoubtedly it has been used to manipulate folks over time. I feel pretty confident that a lot of what I've been through over the years has led me to a place where I can be much more conscientious with my sexuality. And a big part of that is having a partner, again, that I can have real, authentic conversations with around the subject. And before I had sex for the first time, I had a very idealistic thought process around it. The metaphor that I used to use was, at that time, I believed that having sex with someone was the closest we could ever get to like encountering or communicating with another person's soul. And I don't know that I believe it like that so much, but there is certainly an energetic intermingling that is undeniable. I am still a part of, and those who I have had sex with in my life are still a part of me in some shape, form, or fashion. That's profound. And it also, in recent years, has helped me become more aware of the importance of who I actually allow into my energetic field. We act like sex is either just a recreation or a procreation experience, and that's just not the case. It can be and is such a powerful bond. It's a powerful spiritual experience, and it can be a wonderful form of recreation and obviously procreation. I mean, how ironic is it that the thing that got us into this world is the most taboo subject that you can address? That baffles me to no end. We never talk about sex, even amongst our friends. When's the last time you asked your friend, hey, how's your sex life? People almost never talk about it unless there's a problem. And therefore, there's tons of problems. So opening up the dialogue, really exploring our fantasies, our desires, our partners' fantasies and desires in a safe, considerate way. Just exploring the questions that we have around sexuality, exploring like the mechanics of it. Like, there are things that we can become aware of in our physiology that will take our sex life to the next level, and therefore our spiritual life, therefore our productivity and the way that we show up in the world. It's like people act like, very often I hear it expressed that people kind of put too much emphasis on sex. And I think that can be true. And at the same time, your sex life is a major part of how you, like I said, show up in the world. If you think about it, when you're having like a great sex, then like you're showing up differently. And it's hard to maybe kind of feel into that every day, particularly if you're not having great sex, or if it's just kind of like, oh, every now and then it's just mediocre or whatever, then like you're going to be showing up to your work and your creative process in a more mediocre way. Whereas if you are having some, serious good times, conscious sex, geared towards some kind of creative expression, some kind of manifestation, that is going to be present in your aura, and that's going to be a part of your work. It's part of the reason why I re-recorded this intro for the third time. One being that it was like, this is a really important subject. I want to do my best to make sure that I'm communicating effectively. And because I just had a fucking crazy weekend that's got me like on the just vibing, and I want to share that energy with you. I'm holding back a little bit even right now just because it's like, it's so much, but it's so obvious how it's affecting how I'm showing up for you right here, right now to me. So just let that sink in for a little bit. So this subject became really important to me early on, because I saw it as one of the first points of contradiction within my religious upbringing. Catholics aren't really taught to read the Bible, but because I wanted to, understand God as good as I could, I went and read the Bible. Not cover to cover, but I read a lot of it when I was young. And when I saw in there that most of the most significant characters, male characters anyway, in the Bible, had multiple wives, I was really confused because, monogamy was maintained not only as the moral high ground, but that anything else was gonna send you straight to hell, right? And I didn't know how this could be. And when I asked questions about this to the priest or to my parents, well, this was the first time that I got that response. The one when you ask the moral authority a question that they can't answer, and they tell you not to ask questions or to just have faith or to whatever the BS response is. That's what they did to me. Right? They didn't want to hear it. They didn't have an answer for it. And now I understand a lot better why. I'm not going to go into the historical creation of the institution of marriage and how it relates to patriarchal ownership. I'm not going to go into the stories about how those with multiple wives in particular were building small empires, and that this became a threat to the largest landholder, which was the church. I'm not going to go into detail about working with Muslims and seeing how incredibly successful and happy their households of 4 wives were. But I've come to understand that this was not a moral distinction that was made. This was a power distinction that was made. So I'll let you dig into that on your own. But it did raise a lot of questions for me as a child. How come polygamy was practiced for so long and extolled for so long, and then now it is condemned? It didn't make a lot of sense. And so, I just kind of shut that down. I accepted the authority of the priest and of my parents that there must be something wrong with me in even asking the question. Fast forward a few years later, this is going from like age 7, well, it's probably like 10 when I started asking the questions around monogamy. And by age 13, my uncle in our very large Catholic family, no contraception, lots of kids, my uncle cheated on his wife, and it just caused all this drama The family was torn apart. People wouldn't talk to him. The brothers wouldn't talk to him. It was just all kinds of drama because, of course, he's going to hell, right? Now we can't talk to the uncle because he's going to hell because he cheated on blah, blah, blah. And even my dad held this line where he didn't want to talk to his brother because his brother was a cheater. Guess what? 5 years later, my dad, we find out, is banging my best friend's mom while we're remodeling their house. Yup. And at that point, I was just like, okay, hold up. I started looking around. This is like 1998, 1999. I started looking around. I start seeing all these divorces, and I start realizing how many people are cheating, or I start to get an idea. I had no real idea until I was probably in my 30s, and I started talking to my friends about it for real, that the vast majority of men were cheating on their wives, and that wives just would rather not know. Or when they did, then that's when it had to blow up and end in divorce, which is what happened to my family. My family ended in divorce, and because they couldn't talk about anything before the divorce, can't talk about anything after the divorce. So still, it's like everybody's just kind of separated out, swimming in their own trauma of avoidance. Compound that with the fact that around that same time, 99, 2000, is when the Catholic pedophilia scandal started breaking out. Then I was just like, oh, these people can be telling me shit about sexuality. And at that point, I at least internally began to accept myself as polyamorous, or I didn't really have a term for it then, but I began to accept that this was a part of who I was, although I couldn't communicate that to my spouse at the time. If I were to try to even suggest having another partner, then all hell would have broken loose. So, that shame that the Catholic Church imprinted into me lasted a really long time and prevented me from just coming to terms with who I was. And for so long, I mean, it's only been in like the last 2 years, honest to God, 46 now, that I have been able to really come to terms with the fact that this is part of my identity. This is where I feel the most complete, is when I am able to adore the goddess and just pour my attention and affection onto her, onto that archetype in the form of multiple women, because there is just, like I said, it's just fucking the best to watch them just like having fun together. That was such a big part of my weekend, was just like watching these two ladies just walking down the street, holding each other's hands, and me just standing there beside them, just waiting to help in any way that I can. It's really fulfilling. All right, so anyway, this sex journey, I feel like it's like a journey into my sexual security. It's really a recovery is what it is. It's recovering from the trauma of shame that was imputed on me. And I want to help you move through that as well, in whatever way that looks like. So just maybe right now, just like allow yourself to just accept yourself. Just for a minute, just a little window. Sit with yourself. Sit with the fantasy. Sit with maybe your freakiest fantasy and be okay with it. It's okay. It's totally okay. As long as it's consensual. That's really important. It's really, really important. So I didn't have the consent of my first or my second wife to engage in other relationships. Like I said, I couldn't even talk about it really. There were a couple of times that I tried to talk about it, but it just immediately got shut down with some pretty profound anger. So I did like most guys do. I tried to cheat. My first marriage, I can honestly say that I did not try to cheat. There was one time when I was drunk and I called up a girl who had been wanting me to hook up with her. And I was like, I'm ready to go. I was pissed at my wife and she's like, I can't right now. And so we didn't. But I really, that first 10 years of marriage, I just suffered with it. watched a lot of porn, flirted, smoked so much weed going into work. I was working restaurants in those days, and there were always, young, attractive women there, and I would just smoke hella weed so that I wouldn't be tempted to do anything at work. And it was pretty miserable. My second marriage, oh God, even more so. I won't go into all the trauma around that, but just suffice it to say that, well, I did try to cheat in that marriage multiple times, and that was in many ways part of an underlying tension that led to acts of violence being perpetrated on me. It's also really important to me in this episode that it's made clear that men aren't the only perpetuators of physical violence or even rape, as a matter of fact. God, in my first marriage, when I decided to leave, there was a time when I was sleeping in a different room, and I won't go into details here, but yeah, wow, I forgot about that. It could have been considered sexual assault, let's just say that. Second marriage, God almighty, that was insane. There was times, literally times, that I jumped out of a moving car to get away from someone that was punching me in the face while driving, or where I ran across a field to try to get away from someone who was trying to run me over with a car. Whew. And so much of that, though, what I want to get at is that so much of that was centered around an incredibly unhealthy response to my sexual desires, my needs. People don't always match up in their sex energy, and that's okay. But it doesn't have to be an all-out war. It doesn't have to be the end of the relationship. There can be ways to navigate this. My second wife, when I would express, it's been like 3 days, I'm really feeling it, she would tell me to go watch porn like other guys. Ladies, that's not helpful. Guys, if your wife is the one that's wanting more sex than you, that's not helpful. There are ways to work around these challenges. So when I met Courtney, I was just like, I'm not doing this anymore. I lived a lie, absolute lie in my first marriage. My second marriage, I tried to be more honest, but it just would devolve into just, like I said, violence ultimately. And so when Courtney and I got together, we met, and I was like, I am with this person. Whatever way I can be around this person, I'm going to. But the first time we hung out, because I felt that deep desire to really want to be around her, I wasn't going to lie to her. And also because I just fucking don't like lying. It's like the thing that I just have almost zero tolerance for. So anyway, first time we hung out, I remember it plain as day, sitting on my porch, that house that I was living in, porch swing, and telling her I was so nervous, but I was like, look, I don't think I'm able to be monogamous. I have explored this for years, and I'm pretty sure I just can't do it. And fortunately, she was able to receive that and respond in a patient, healthy way. Maybe it's because we were so early on in our relationship. But she was like, look, I get it. She had been dating a man who was in a relationship with another woman. She had witnessed over and over men cheating on women, and was very much in the same mindset that she would rather live a life of truth and reality than a life of lies and delusion. And that's been the liberation factor, honestly. The fact that we've just been able to talk about it. And from there, yes, there have been many, many challenging conversations, but it has really evolved into something that is more powerful, more beautiful than I could have ever imagined. I am so much more turned on for this woman than I've ever been, and we're 11 and something years deep in our relationship. But yeah, there's been some challenges. I mean, early on in the thing, I still had challenges communicating to her when I was interested in somebody, because she is a human being and would express some jealousy or some fear of abandonment. Even though I promised her that I would always tell her if I was ever with someone, there was actually an instance in Jamaica many years ago where I cheated on her. I was doing some consulting for the government down there, touring different facilities and looking to set up some oyster mushroom farms. And the lady that was connecting me with all of the people, the government agencies, attractive, 30-something, definitely was into me, and I was definitely I was feeling that. And so I brought it up. She's like, yeah, let's do it. And so we rented a cabin up in the Blue Mountains, and we got busy for, yeah, it was good in the moment. And then like the next day, I talked to Courtney on the phone, and I couldn't tell her then. And then I got home, a week or two later, and I couldn't tell her then. And then we took mushrooms a week or two later, and she was like, you're hiding something from me. And I was like, what, me? No, what do you mean? No, you're hiding something. I can tell it, I can smell it, I can feel it, and I want to know what it is because it's something big. And that night around that fire, just me and her, I just dug in. I can remember just my head down, just being like, I don't know what you're talking about. And I remember that kind of confusion and having to fight through the resistance. Oh, it was horrible. It was horrible. And I held on through the entire night. I clutched on and did not let go, and I did not tell her. And then the next day, I was working in my reishi room. I will never forget cleaning out reishi spores and just feeling like this massive weight on top of me, like a huge, wet, hot rug just laying on me. And she came down there for something, and the vibe was still really off, and I think I was out with it. I was like, look, you know how last night you were saying this? I cheated on you. I was with someone in Jamaica, and I told her who and all that. And it was one of the most difficult things that I've ever spoken in my life. I was terrified of losing her, and I didn't. She, had some initial struggles with my lack of honesty, but she appreciated that I eventually came to the truth, and it took a while, but it ultimately empowered us as a relationship. And, from there, I kind of explored whether or not, I was going to date women outside of her, because this was just a thing. I still would kind of have a little bit of back and forth. Am I really going to do this kind of poly thing? And when I cheated on her, I was just like, okay, look, this is what's happening. How are we going to do this? How are we going to talk about this? How are we going to really make this work? And so my original idea had been to date people separately and not tie her to that. And that just created this kind of disparity, we're both going different directions. And then there were times where I would try to facilitate her feeling connected to a woman that I was feeling connected with. As she said on this podcast, and we'll talk about in our episode that we record on this subject, oh, you're going to love that one. She'd already been intimate with women before, and so it just seemed reasonable. She and I had already had kind of fallen into a little menage a trois at a year or so before this all happened. And so I just thought okay, this is the way we should do it then. We should all be together instead of me trying to have some thing on the side. And the struggle there was that I was pretty unhealthy myself. in a lot of ways. And so I was still attracted to pretty unhealthy women at times. And so Courtney is one of the healthiest, stable people I've ever known. And it was, she wasn't getting down with a lot of those women. So that created friction. And we saw therapists, talked to counselors, tried so many different ways to explore this. She would sometimes talk with men and I would get jealous, and it was a struggle, still is a struggle. It's still a struggle for her to an extent at times, I think, although where we landed, and I just want to give thanks to a therapist. I probably won't say her name here right now, because it was her intimate sharing that really impacted me in this. There was a therapist that I worked with in Jamaica who I had massive respect for. And she had been in open relationships, poly relationships. She had been a sex therapist for a long time. And she had told me how she was, ethically non-monogamous, that her husband wasn't, and that eventually he left her because he just couldn't keep up with it. He couldn't manage her having all these different lovers and him not being a part of it, and he wasn't into guys, so it just was not working out. And he left, and I asked her if she would do it over again. Would she be polyamorous? And she said no, because she lost her marriage. She lost the man that she loved because of that. And so that really had me thinking about this, because I love this woman, Courtney Rose, and I want to spend many, 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 many years with her. Feels like 50 years would be not even a fraction of enough. And so when she said that, it really, really caused me to reevaluate the risks that I was taking and putting my relationship in. And at the same time, still having this relentless impulse to be with multiple women. And so what did that look like? How did that evolve? And again, I'm just sharing this because I'm hopeful that there are people out there that will benefit from hearing different ways. You don't have to lose your love because your desires are a little different. And I'm really excited for Courtney to share her perspective on this, because I think she's got a lot of real value for the women out there. And so anyway, it wasn't much longer after that we left Jamaica and came back up to the States, and I had ultimately internalized the saying of let go and let God. I had been spending years and years trying to make something happen, right? Trying to, I hate to say it, this is the thing that is the most challenging for me to admit, I feel like, but it's really important that I do, is that I had attempted and at times coerced my wife that I adore and or another woman to be together with me, even though like one or both weren't really into it. And it's so hard to acknowledge. It's so shameful. And it is something that guys have just been taught is the way this works. How many guys out there have been told that you just wear a woman down? You just keep going at it. You keep talking about her, or keep talking to her, keep trying to convince her that she wants you. It's fucking gross, guys. Don't do it. Coercion, like, it's a nuanced topic, right? because there is that kind of push and pull where oftentimes we will reject doing the thing that we want to do because of some social pressure, just like the whole monogamy thing. But there is absolutely a line where, like, and it's not even no. Like, no is not even where the line begins. The line begins at, oh boy, have I even dug through this enough myself? Where does that line begin where kind of conversation becomes coercion? I just think that at the beginning of any resistance, honestly, like if someone is expressing resistance, if you're communicating a desire and someone is expressing resistance, you can maybe bring curiosity in. But yeah, trying to convince someone to do something that they don't hell yes want to do, that is leftover patriarchal ownership, property. I mean, like, just for a minute, realize that until I think it was like the mid 70s, women could not even get a loan without getting co-signed by a man. And that could be about any man. It could be their son. If you had an 18-year-old son and you're a 50-year-old woman, he could co-sign for your loan, whereas you couldn't even sign for yourself, right? So if we look around, we can see that we're still pretty deep into this kind of patriarchal ownership, but it is coming to an end. And I think this conversation is part of that. Waking up to this reality that we cannot, should not, and hopefully will not be trying to talk women into having sex with us. It's a vibe, it's an energy, it's an exchange, it's a reciprocity. So anyway, once I let go and let God, it was amazing how things changed. It was incredible. I spent about a year and a half of honest to goodness, like just like still having those desires, but instead of attaching to them with this like wantonness, observing them or engaging with them in this kind of openness and this, like, I see you, I accept you, it's okay, trust the process. And at about a year and a half after really on the daily engaging with that, a woman who we knew for like 2 years, had a really good friendship with, it just kind of opened up where we all just realized, like, wow, we really love each other, and there's more here than just friendship. And so now for about a year and a half at this point, we've gotten to experience what it's like to be in that reciprocal relationship where 3 people actually really want to all be together. And it is phenomenal. It is better than I could have ever imagined. Are there ups and downs? Have we had to reevaluate things? Absolutely. Do you have to do that in a monogamous relationship? Absolutely. Are there varied perspectives? Do we get feedback from each other, and are we able to see maybe a bigger picture because there's more perspective? Absolutely. Everything's got pros and cons. The pros here, seeing my wife having that companionship, that friend, that lover, and getting to have that myself and take care of them, and all of the, fun stuff that goes along with that, it is over the top. And it's ultimately, I truly believe that it ultimately is coming down to me letting go of that wantonness, right? Now, you know, I've never, well, there was one time that I tried to manage 3 women in my life, and it was just too much. Maybe because they were all separate and I was trying to manage all these things out and around. I don't know. I'm not saying that's where, I'm not saying that we're headed to Eric's harem by any means. But I am really recognizing that I love when my cup runneth over, particularly when it runneth over with goddess. Oh, there is nothing like the feminine energy for me. Maybe it's because I'm so fiery and I'm just like, I'm a pretty masculine guy in most ways. And I can get fluid. Y'all see me on my roller skates. But for the most part, yeah, I like breaking shit. I like burning shit. I like building shit. I mean, isn't that kind of like the drive of the masculine, is to create, build, even destroy for the feminine? Maybe not in all cases, but I feel like particularly healthy masculinity, that's what it's trying to do. If you look at like the Taj Mahal, right? Like the Taj Mahal, one of the 7 wonders of the world, was built for a man's wife. When I think about my wife and how I want to just like so much of the home improvement and so much of what I've done here with my hands has been for her to see and feel and be proud of. I'm coming to really experience the greatest form of my devotion to my Creator is to adore and be of service to the goddess, to the archetype of the goddess, to the feminine. If you go back and listen to the episode that I did a while back, I have to get the title of it. I'll put a link in the show notes, but talking about my relating with this archetype of the goddess and her coming to me in a mushroom trip. And this has been something that's building for a very long time. And I feel like it is a very powerful force that's bringing health and vitality and creativity into my life. And I'm so grateful for it. Now, again, like it's been a bit of a challenge getting here. I have done some pretty ugly things, especially like in my 20s and early 30s, high school. Oh God. Some of the things that I did in high school. Whew. So I hope you can forgive me for that, as I have forgiven myself. It's taken some come to Jesus moments, but understanding now that the feminine is the portal, that she is how life comes into this world. Yes, man, you are a part of that, a big part of that, an equal part of that. Socially, however, I'm not sure. I'm quite sure that it's been very out of balance. And in terms of sexuality, in terms of this balance, this is another major revelation that I had growing up that mushrooms really provided me with. I grew up believing that gay people straight to hell before they're in line in front of the divorced people. That's for sure. Oh my God, but how absolutely, completely and utterly false that is. And how mushrooms opened me up to that. Well, maybe you don't experience mushrooms as the spirit world. That's fine. That's another kind of come to Jesus that I had to have over the course of several years. But I'll never forget, I don't think, the first time I ever saw orbs floating around a person. I watched an orb come in off the sea and come right to this gay man. and circled around him for a period of time. And it was so powerful. And I was like, what? I mean, I felt already in his presence that he was just such an important human being. But I didn't know really why. I mean, it's not like he wasn't like a politician, or he wasn't doing any work that would have been like so important. But I felt like he was really important, really valuable. And then I saw that and I wondered, what is that? What's going on? And then I would work with more gay men, and I would have more experiences of this sensation of angels surrounding them, or these beings of light surrounding these gay men. And as I've really tried to explore that over the years, I've come to believe that gay men in particular are helping to reestablish the balance that we have been so far out of balance with. I'm really excited for you all to listen to the conversation that I had with Mikhail here in the studio. He has a profound story of his coming into his sexuality. Oh man, wait till you listen to that one. He is a fucking gem. Another example of one of these really valuable human beings that are helping to bring balance to the world. And again, so this is where more biblical conflict, and it's so wild how deep this is in my subconscious, that even after completely rejecting Catholicism for so many years, that it took more years to come to understand or come to accept, really fully embrace homosexuality, not as a bad thing, but potentially as one of the best things. It's bringing the balance needed back into our planet. So I want to thank you, all of you who have been a part of that fight, particularly like the 80s and early 90s and the 70s. Can you imagine being a gay man in American society? I mean, I'm not going to compare it to Iran or whatever, but like in the 80s, in this culture of, oh yeah, be who you are. And then when you be who you are, they just tell you that you're evil and you're going to hell. The blaming of the AIDS epidemic on the gay disease, how it was treated. I personally think that psychedelic aficionados, whatever, psychedelic explorers who seem to be enjoying some public acceptance, owe a lot of that to the gay community for standing up and saying, this is who I am and this is who I'm going to be. And so I just want to thank you all sincerely. And that's not to not appreciate gay women or anything like that. As a man, though, the gay male thing has been a real hurdle for me to overcome. I remember once when I was studying Kabbalah with a Jewish elder, a woman who I knew from U of L. She told me, I asked her, it's like, why is it that in the Bible, like, man-on-man sex is absolutely, utterly prohibited by death, like, but girl-on-girl sex is never mentioned? I mean, it's like very specific men, conspicuously absent women. And thinking about like the stories of Solomon, like if this guy really existed and he had 1,000 wives or whatever, he ain't pleasing them all at the same time, so they're probably taking care of each other, if nothing else. And she said to me that it was because male homosexuality blatantly disrupts the power structure, because a man penetrating another man immediately causes confusion as to who's in charge, right? Whereas women with women, it's kind of like nobody's in charge. They're just having fun, right? So, like, wow, that is pretty crazy to think about now. Like, obviously that changes when you start to realize that there's a lot of different ways that, we can be penetrated, etc. But it also speaks to the patriarchal control structures. So, yeah, it shook things up for me. So like, I do think it's important. It's valuable for us men, particularly straight men, and maybe even especially psychedelically straight men to consider what it would be like for a man to come out as gay, even today still in a lot of places, and have some compassion and have some respect for those people because they are actually doing some really important work. And while we're on the subject of taboos, the last one that I'd like to directly address before wrapping up this monologue, or beginning to wrap up this monologue, is, boy, man, I think this is probably the most taboo of all. If you listen back to episode 123, you'll hear me talking about the skull and the realizations that I had in this mushroom trip a year or so ago. One of the first things that came up during that trip was everything you've been told about God is to be flipped on its head. Now, I'm not going to go into the real depths of that and how that relates to this serpent and the Judeo-Christian God and who that really is and who is the world really serving right now. I will ask the question, do you think that the true God is a jealous and angry God? Anyway, all right, stay away from the tangents, stay on the topic. The topic is taboo, and it is so hard for me to say, even still, menstrual cycles. Now, so gay men have been told they're going to hell. Whatever all the other proscriptions that the fucking bullshit religions try to put on us. But perhaps one of the most pervasive, one of the most problematic, as I reflect on this now, is this bullshit storyline that a woman's period is a time of uncleanliness. To try and wrap our heads around, men particularly, how this impacts a woman's concept of self, I think is all but impossible for us to grasp. But I think it's really fucking important that we try. So for around 6,000 years, it has been maintained that women are unclean at this time. Can you imagine what it would be like for 7 out of every 28 days for you to subconsciously consider yourself unclean or a problem? When I learned of the mikvahs at the same time I was studying with this koala teacher, these mikvah baths that are ceremonial baths that Orthodox Judaic women are supposed to go through before they can engage in sexual intercourse with their husband again. When I learned that there are rabbis who will analyze blood in the panties of men's wives to make sure it's not period blood and that they can still have sex, I really started questioning things. But it wasn't until this mushroom trip, and this is like, 10 years, 12, more than that, 15 years after starting to question the validity of this proscription, that I started to understand, much like the homosexuality, that the opposite is true. It's not a time of uncleanliness. This is not something that's to be shunned or avoided, or it's something that should be, I think, celebrated. I think it is. I have found it to be an incredibly powerful time, spiritually incredibly powerful. And I've seen the real impact on my wife that it's had for me to switch that perspective. Now, I'm not going to get into details about what that looks like here, maybe at some point. Maybe it'll be for our Patreon listeners. But suffice it to say that I have come to understand that this was proscribed in an attempt to strip women of their power. And that if we will change our perspective, that we can see it as a window of opportunity to allow some real magic in our lives. I don't really know what more to say on it. I'm not going to say any more on that right now. I want to apologize to women out there for this being the narrative, because it's utter garbage. I think about how women have to navigate the workplace, how they have to navigate their intimate relationships with their marital partners at times or significant others. And it's just, it's understandable why we've been so confused for so long, but it's also kind of deplorable. So, bottom line, I'm ready to reject the Genesis story completely. Snakes are not evil. They are symbols of wisdom, power, magic, transformation. It's actually the serpent in the Bible that told the truth. And women are not the origin of original sin. The opposite is true. Women are the origin of liberation, of life. Anyway, it's that one really goes to my heart, because if there was something that I feel like in my first two marriages that I really contributed to negative perceptions of self, it's that. And I'm really sorry for that. Even within my current marriage, there have been many years what I have contributed to that delusion. And, friends of mine, I've got Jewish friends, I've got Christian friends, I got people, we don't have to agree. I'm not saying that you're a bad person. I am encouraging you to question tradition, because tradition is very often used as a pretext to prevent us from growing. So, anyway, it is difficult to come to terms with all this, and it is our responsibility. Man, far too long we have been just walking in with those dicks swinging. The mansplaining thing, that's so like, now I can't unsee that shit. So you may have criticisms for me in this episode. That's fine. You can drop them. I'm doing the best I can at the moment. I'm learning, I'm growing, I'm acknowledging my failings, and I am becoming a bigger and better person for them. And it's empowering. It's challenging at first to really examine the ways that we have negatively impacted, particularly the people that we love. But ultimately, when you push through that, you become a bigger, better person. And that's what I've done. I know it. I see it. It's reflected in my life all around me. And I'm encouraging you to as well. I'm not saying that you're not. I'm just continuing to encourage, and you continue to encourage me. So, two other things that I want to just kind of introduce in this monologue that seem really important to the context of a chapter on sexuality, which I'm curious how you are digging this. I know we're just, this is the beginning of chapter 2, but I love this style. I love what we got going on here with this show. But that topic The first one, anyway, is pornography. I'm not going to go off the rails here. I've talked about porn in previous episodes. I do want to say that thanks to some of my guests in this chapter, I've kind of had a different perspective on porn a little bit. I've been an absolute teetotaler against it for quite a while. I think that was probably more a response to my addictive tendencies around it. There was certainly some years where, it had a grip on me. I'm not proud of that either. And at the same time, when you hear these stats, you'll understand that it ain't just me. So I'm going to read a little bit here for you. All right, so in previous episodes, I've talked about this, how kind of ubiquitous porn is. Something like 95% of all adult men and 85% of adult women say that they have viewed pornography at least once a month. In the show notes, again, I'm going to post links to some of these studies that I cited. One of them in particular, I forget, I do know which one it is, has incredible graphics. I'll put a note on that. It's got a little infographics on porn consumption. And so it's a bit of a double-edged sword, because this information can be used to justify porn usage. But my hope is that it's going to help people at least feel not so alone in what I think is probably a struggle. I'm not sure what amount or if there is a healthy amount of pornography. But again, my conversations with particularly the hosts of the Shameless Sex Podcast gave me some different thoughts around it. Helped me to think differently about it. So anyway, these studies break down into various age groups, types of sexual content, and other criteria. The following quote is from Psychology Today. It's linked in the show notes. It says, Americans visit porn sites at astronomical rates. Using a set of metrics that includes indicators of monthly unique visitors as well as monthly page views, the authors found that the top 3 pornography sites are more highly ranked than the most well-known household names, in parentheses, Amazon, Netflix, and Yahoo, as well as those that are the most up-and-coming, TikTok, OpenAI, and Zoom. Exactly how great is this disparity? In a word, huge. Xvideos, the top-ranked pornography site, had 700 million more total visits than Amazon. And then, get ready, here's a number dump. 900 million, 1 billion 100 million, 1 billion 300 million, 1 billion 500 million, and 1 billion 800 million more visits than TikTok, OpenAI, LinkedIn, Netflix, and the Weather Channel, respectively. So it might be a little bit just to hear on the audio here, but again, show notes, you can find this. That is a hell of a lot. I mean, I go to the Weather Channel probably 3 times a day sometimes, and you're talking about Xvideos has 1 billion 800 million more total visits than the Weather Channel. Boy, it's raining out there. You want your umbrella, that's for sure. And which countries watch the most porn? Well, if you're like me, you would have thought the U.S., but you would have also, like me, been wrong. In fact, the U.S. came 15th in the world in porn consumption. And of course, the countries that were the highest ranked are those that have the most restrictive cultural views around pornography. Pakistan, Iran, Russia, Korea, Philippines. all of those ranked higher than the U.S., and those are all are more, I don't know, whatever, against porn. So anyway, you see how repression works, right? I've had struggles with porn. It's okay. I'm not ashamed to admit it. Many of us do. Again, though, like, there's different ways to think about it. So anyway, I think that's all I want to say on that. And then the last subject that I would like to bring up, just to introduce to you the idea, because it is touched on by one of our guests on the chapter. It's another taboo topic, probably because it also involves bodily fluids. I know, whatever it is about that. And that's semen retention. This one's not just for the guys, even though it may sound like it is. It was actually my wife that helped me even consider it. When I first heard about it, when Courtney told me about this guy that she was dating, practicing semen retention, I was like, the fuck that. Why am I trying to not have an orgasm? No, thank you. And then something switched. Mushrooms had a role in it. I'm not exactly sure when it switched. I think ultimately it came down to me wanting to please my wife or women that we were with longer. So it was kind of originated for me in an egoic manner, but I have come to understand it as a profound spiritual technology. Mantak Chia is by far the best known and maybe one of the best teachers on the subject. And it's really difficult for me anyway at this point to explain why it's such a powerful practice. But you can simplify it and think about just the biological reality that every time a man ejaculates, he is letting go of millions and millions of sperm, every one of those being a potent potentiator for life. And men, you are probably familiar with how you feel when you've not released in whatever period of time that is for you. But after, for me, depending on whether or not I'm being sexually active, if I'm being sexually active and I haven't, let it go for 3 days, then I start to feel a little pent up. If I'm not being sexually active, then it can go for, a week and a half or so before I start to really feel pent up. But that pent upness is energy. And that energy can be consciously directed and engaged with and applied in different ways. And it is so powerful. I had absolutely no idea. And I am still, I am not an expert in this. It's something I have been working with for several years now. And, different levels of success. It requires some significant discipline. As I understand it, there are 3 forms of Tantra, and we've got a lot of fucking information around Tantra that's just kind of partial at best, right? But from what I understand, the 3 basic forms are white, gray, and black. And in black Tantra, the man ejaculates every time. In gray Tantra, it's sometimes. And in white Tantra, it's never. And I don't even know how to put it into words. A lot of my guy friends have said it's crazy. And then I've had some guys that have tried it and have been like, it's just absolutely transformed my life. I have so much more energy. I'm so much more loving. I'm so much more patient. You do have to get over that hump, right? The dreaded blue balls. Oh my God, if I don't get rid of this, then maybe I'll die, right? ladies, that was one of the, I haven't heard that for a long time, but that is one of the things that people used to say, right, back in the day. Oh, if I don't get rid of this, then something really bad's going to happen. That is not true. As a matter of fact, something very good is going to happen. For one, you're going to stay turned on. And who doesn't want to be turned on? Who doesn't want to be turned on for life? Because your sexual energy, like, it's not just like turned on for sex. It's turned on for life. I'm ready to go get it. I'm ready to create. I'm ready to engage. I'm ready to be out in this world. It's powerful. And then there is the reality that your sexuality becomes much more focused on your partner. If you're not focused on when you're going to get yours, then that opens up so much opportunity to like really think about your partner or partners. Also, for erectile dysfunction, it is the remedy. I am pretty confident that a big part of the erectile dysfunction epidemic that seems to be going on is an outcome of just blowing your load indiscriminately. I feel very tried for like a couple of weeks, and you'll probably understand why. Because guys, remember how when you were like 12 years old and the wind would blow a certain way and you'd be ready to go? It can be like that again, and it's a great feeling. Not only that, but your partner or partners will be so much more turned on for you because, first of all, you're in it to please them. Second of all, you've got a very functioning Johnson. And third of all, that energy that you're radiating is like, it just builds confidence, it builds curiosity, it builds joyfulness, and that is hot as hell. That is very attractive. So, if you want to have more sex, practice semen retention, guys. Oh yeah, I guess that's the thing that I should say. A lot of people will think when we're talking about that you're talking about like celibacy. That is not the case. You too, men. This is the big one really here. So there's always this like legend of multiple orgasms for women and how women can have multiple orgasms, but men can't. Bullshit. First of all, women are not going to have multiple orgasms with the kind of sex that most women are having. I do have a word. Let me cite this. Where was it? I have a citation. Oh yeah. Psychology Today again says that the average duration for heterosexual intercourse is 3 to 5 minutes. What? So a woman ain't having one orgasm in 3 to 5 minutes unless you're doing some serious warm-up. And most women, in case you're not aware, guys, most women can't have an orgasm without clitoral stimulation. This is another thing that just blows my mind. It wasn't even really recognized until like maybe the 90s. It started to be talked about a little bit that women having orgasms was important. Did you know that women used to go to the doctor to have orgasms? That this is where the original vibrators started, and that the word hysteria is related to, I guess, temporary psychosis due to not having orgasms. I remember back at U of L when I was in a class of like 150 people and we were studying whatever it was, Freud, I think, and this word hysteria came up and I raised my hand. I was like, does anybody else find it interesting that the word for crazy is also like connected to hysterectomy or the connected to the womb? And like everybody laughed at me, except for the instructor. It was like, yeah, I think that's really worth noting. And then you dig into it and you find out that actually the word hysteria comes from like woman crazy is what it ultimately means. And that it was related to the lack of orgasming, and that is still happening. There are so many unsatisfied women out there, and it drives me crazy because all it takes is a little bit of compassion, a little bit of attentiveness, a little bit of time. And you can have such a satisfied woman on your hands, and when you do, you're going to be more satisfied. Anyway, porn has it laid out that like sex is all about the man blowing his load on all the places. Women, like maybe they come, or like this whole pornography bullshit of women faking orgasms. It does not have to be like that. So this, I am encouraging all men out there to explore as a method or a tech to help you please your women and to help you, have multiple orgasms yourself, because you can. That's just like, I want to help you understand this, that the orgasm and the ejaculation are not the same thing, and that you can have multiple massive blasts of energy up through your body that will just expand your consciousness, that can put you into an altered state. You can fucking time travel with this shit. I promise you, because I've experienced it. So I want to encourage you to maybe work on that, seek some resources out. Our guest, I keep wanting to call him Tyler, but I know it's not Tyler. Anyway, it's going to be the first episode you'll listen to, and you're going to like it. I think he's a great guy. Anyway, moving on. So, anything else to say on that? I think not. It gets into some pretty esoteric stuff if we want it to be. Some people do say that it contributes to ESP. Some people say that it contributes to out-of-body experiences. Montauk Chia will tell you that if you get deep enough into it. And I think there's some validity there. But anyway, from that, I think that's all of it, y'all. If you stuck around to the end of this, then you are so sexy. You deserve to be so satisfied. It's a controversial topic. I know we all like talking about it, though. So I want to hear your comments, your thoughts in the video below, especially on the upcoming episodes, but this one as well. I really deeply appreciate your time. This has been a very intimate share on my end, and I hope that it is received graciously. I thank you so much for being on this journey with me, and let's keep it sexy, shall we?